What's going on, Fourth and Inches podcast listeners? You got Kev, Danny, Stevie P coming at you. What's going on, fellas?
What's going on, fellas? What's going on, Dan? What's going on, Kev?
What's going on, guys? Just making out.
All right, so we are going to get into our wide receiver ranks today on today's podcast. But first, let me remind you, if you are listening, check us out on our website as well. It is www.fourthandinchesff.com. That's www.4thandinchesff.com. Go check it out. We got a whole bunch of content. We got articles. We got a draft guide for you guys. We have our ranks. Our full ranks will be up there. Today we're going to talk about different players that interest us, different discrepancies in our ranks. But if you want to check out, the full ranks, they're on the website. And if you're listening to the podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you can stay in touch with us. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So first, I want to ask you guys. I mean, this is pretty much an obvious question, but how do you guys look at differences when you're drafting PPR versus standard? Obviously, you're going to be looking for guys more in PPR that catch the ball, but just describe a little bit about what you guys look at when you are drafting for a PPR league versus a standard league.
I'll go first. So when I'm looking for PPR, I'm looking for catches, guys who have a high volume of catches. I'm willing to, I guess, pass on the wide receiver position a little bit in PPR more than I am in non-PPR because I feel like I can get a guy who can get me 80 receptions and make up for some of the touchdowns I'm losing from the big guys. So normally, you guys know you're in a bunch of leagues with me, but I don't mind waiting on wide receiver. I know some people will go early receiver. This year, I don't mind that because I feel like it's a good year to do that. But it depends on the year and what players are available in each year, what I think is going to happen. But, yeah, for PPR, it's more, I like to get the pass-catching running backs, the big guys that I know are going to run for over 1,000 yards and, possible 10 touchdowns and are going to catch the ball at least 50 times are the running backs that I try to get early. And then for non-PPR, I look for 10 touchdowns. That is my objective. I draft players that have 10 touchdown upside. So in a non-PPR, I will take Kelsey extremely early. I will take, guys like, Hopkins and, guys that I know are going to score a bunch of touchdowns early and, try to get those touchdowns because in non-PPR, the touchdown is king. So that's kind of where I go with it.
All right. Yeah. Let me speak about my two differences about PPR and non-PPR. I guess I'll do like Steve. I'll go PPR first. I've always been I know we touched on this with the running backs when we talked about PPR with those, and I've always been draft earlier with the receivers in PPR, guys that get a lot of work, like your Antonio Browns and your DeAndre Hopkinses. But I'll be honest with you, having like a Todd Gurley on my team the last couple of years, I've swayed it a little bit, and I think if I don't keep Todd Gurley, depending on what his value is when we get closer to our draft, keep him for my third year dynasty. But if I don't keep him, I'm definitely not off the track of taking a running back with that catches a lot of balls out of the backfield, because he that's exactly what Todd Gurley did for me last year. He was just as much of a threat to take it to the house on a check down as he was on a run play. So that's pretty much where I stand on PPR and non-PPR. I look for receivers or running backs that are going to get you that 100-yard mark. They get you that bonus. Obviously, Steve said touchdowns are big, and if you're not getting it per reception or per rush, they definitely are important. But having that bonus is pretty much like catching a touchdown a game or rushing for a touchdown a game. And then if your running back or receiver gets the addition with those touchdowns, then you're really just stacking the points. So that's pretty much how I feel on both of those scoring systems, Kev.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to PPR, I mean, obviously your Julian Edelman's, your Jarvis Landry's, your who was the other guy I had in my mind? was another guy I had in my mind at that point too. But those guys are going to typically Keenan Allen. That's what it is. Like those kind of guys are going to get a little more love. Whereas in standard leagues, you might have your Kenny Galladay, your or Brandon Cooks, guys like that that'll probably get a little bit more love. To me, I mean, I think in a PPR league, it's probably better for me to wait on receiver because I think that you're going to get guys in the later rounds that are just catching balls and being able to put up double-digit points just off their catches, and those running backs at the top of the draft will probably help you out a little bit. Whereas in standard league, I'm not afraid to grab a wide receiver early because it's all about touchdowns. So, nowadays it seems like, guys like the DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams and these guys are scoring just as much as, solid running backs. So that's just the way the game, the NFL has changed and shaped up nowadays. So, that's kind of the strategy I use, I guess, when, comparing the two. So with that being said, let's get into our one wide receiver. It's kind of, been a little headache for everybody this year. Tyreek Hill. We know his situation. Most of you, if you're listening to a fantasy football podcast, you're probably vested, so you probably know about Tyreek Hill. And he's accused of beating his kid. He's beat his wife before while she was pregnant. He's done some pretty screwed up things. With that being said, it's fantasy football, so we kind of have to avoid that a little bit and reference it to, just his stats. So depending on his suspension, I mean, we are pretty sure he's going to get a suspension. So rate it 4 to 6 to 8 games. Where are you taking him in the draft, pending on the number of games he's being suspended?
I guess I'll touch on this one first. Right now, I have him as a 4-game suspension. If I put him on my draft or on my rankings as a 4-game suspension, I have him at 16. If he does drop to 6 game suspension, he's probably going to be closer to the 30 mark. I don't think anybody really wants their wide receiver to miss 6 out of the 16 games. It's pretty significant. So he would probably drop closer to 30 for me. Maybe late 20s. I don't know. I have to reevaluate and see what guys I have in that area that would have more value. But right now he's at 16. That's just based on him having a 4-game suspension. Obviously, we all know Tyreek Hill's abilities. If he's in there every game, he's top 5, top 10, easy. So that's just right now 16 for me as a 4-game suspension.
Yeah. So I am going to go on a little rant. So
I know you are.
I'm going to go on a little rant, and I don't do this often because I try to stay out of other people's, and I'm going to drop the F-bomb a couple times just to let you guys know. So if you have kids listening, you might want to fast forward this. So I will not draft fucking Tyreek Hill ever again. That is me personal. I'm not telling you to do that. To me, I don't draft pieces of shit. I actually, last year I had, I heard something about him hitting his girlfriend. I did have him on one of my teams. And when I found out what happened, that he hit his girlfriend while she was fucking pregnant, I traded him for, I don't know, a 7th round swap or some fucking ridiculousness to a guy that was 1 spot ahead of me in the draft. For me, I know you're not supposed to put your personal feelings in fantasy football, and I'm not asking you to. I'm telling you the way I play. I don't want to root for a fucking guy that's a piece of shit, and he is a piece of shit. So, on Sunday, I don't want to root for that piece of shit. So that's my small little rant. Now, with my fantasy analysis on Tyreek Hill,
he's number 80. He's number 85. I already know it.
No, I do have him serving more games than 4. So I actually have him, I want to say I think I have him way down there. He might be in the 40s, something like that. But for me, until I find out that he's not serving that many games, to me, to miss half of your season, with a guy that you're probably going to have to take, especially now that the news came out that the coaching staff or whoever it was that leaked the information said that he might be only serving 4 games. He's probably going to go a lot higher. We've seen it in mock drafts. Me and Kev, we were actually talking about this yesterday because we saw it, him going a little bit early. I think in a mock draft that we did a couple days ago, Kev, right? Didn't he go in like the 5th
Yeah.
round or something?
Fourth
round. So, he's starting to go a lot earlier than I'm willing to take him for his talent. I feel like if he does get 4 games, even then I'm not taking him before the end of the 5th, beginning of the 6th. Later on in the draft, if he's serving 6 to 8 games, I won't be taking him until, probably almost the double-digit rounds, maybe like 9 or 10. I just don't feel like you can go that many games with picking a guy in the 4th round without him playing. You know what I mean? A couple of years ago, we remember Le'Veon Bell missed, I believe it was, 4 games or 3 games? He missed 3 games. And he was able to come back and win people fantasy championships. Because in 3 games, you're not out of it. But in 6 games, if you're 1-5, you have a hell of a hill to climb to get back into
no
your...
pun intended.
Yeah. To get back into your fantasy playoffs. And I am not going to do that to my fantasy team. I'd rather take a guy that I know is going to play every week. Hell, I'd rather even take Sammy Watkins that I know is going to, at least be there. And, I'd rather risk the injury, than take Tyreek Hill. And they're both basically going, I believe they're going like back to back almost. And I would rather go that direction.
All right. So for me, it all depends on the game. The game total obviously is going to depend where he goes. I'm going to look at the 4-game suspension because it's literally the only number I've heard tossed out there. Other than I've heard 6, I've heard 8, but I've never heard that from anybody that actually makes a difference. So if I go with 4 games and say he's suspended for 4 games, I think that's a good 4th round pick. If you look at it, going back to last year, if you scratched off a quarter of his stats, which is what 4 games would be, a quarter of his stats, you're talking about 60 catches for 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns approximately, 15 carries, 120 yards, and a touchdown rushing. That's putting him at 228 fantasy points. That would have finished him as the number 15 wide receiver in PPR, right ahead of Tyler Boyd. Like that, you're getting that in the 4th round, maybe 5th round, wherever he's going. Last year, Julian Edelman had a similar situation. He was suspended for 4 games. You got him in like the 6th, 7th round last year. So he was excellent value because he ended up as the number 23 fantasy wide receiver overall in point per catch. But Tyreek Hill on that offense with that quarterback has so much upside. And, I'm not a fan of his personality either. But, he's not a bad choice if you're trying to make some money. He's not a bad choice in the 4th round. If it's only a 4-game suspension, obviously things, may have to change if, once we find out the number of games. So, with that being said, oh my God.
Yeah, and I'm not telling you guys, like I said, I'm not telling you guys not to take Tyreek Hill. If you feel like he's going to win you a championship, then, that's the piece you need, then that's the piece you need. I'm just telling you that, until you find out, not a lot of people are drafting right this minute. People are waiting until, maybe, the second, the first week of August, second week of August. We always, in our drafts, we draft, after the 3rd week so that we can just get rid of all the injuries. We like to set it up that way because nobody wants to draft a guy who is going to miss the season. So, however your league drafts and when they draft is what's going to determine when you draft Tyreek Hill. If he, like Kev said.
Someone always does, though, Steve. I think that goes with everybody's draft. It's the comical part.
Yeah.
That's what makes it fun. When someone goes and throws it up on the board and you're like, does anybody want to say anything to him about that? Maybe not.
Yeah, you definitely have your uninformed players. Especially in our league, some of the guys that are in our league, I think they pay a whole lot of attention during the season, but preseason they are. There's at least 2 guys that I can think of that are completely fucking clueless.
They all have their two guys in the league. Everybody in every league, 10, 12 man, they got 2 guys that are just there doing their research on the spot. It's
exactly. Exactly.
They're just drafting by the book. That's 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months old.
Yeah, and our league is actually worth some money, so I don't understand it, but it is what it is.
All right.
All right.
What we got number-
So let's get into our number ones. Steve, I'll start with you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my number one wide receiver is Julio Jones. So I'm going to explain why. So Julio has been just awesome. There's no other way to say it. You know what I mean? He's always going to give you the yardage. He's always going to give you the catches. And we're talking PPR right now. So you know he's good for 100 catches almost every single year. I mean, he might be a little bit shy of that, like around high 90s, mid 90s. He's always good for 1450 plus yards. He had a 1900 yard season. The dude is just super consistent. Touchdowns, to me, I do not try to predict touchdowns because they are the most ridiculously hard stat to try to predict. So, even, a lot of people will say DeAndre Hopkins, that he is, a lock, but DeAndre Hopkins also had a 4 touchdown season, and we don't know if injuries occur on that team that are going to cause him to be not as good as he is, and that could happen to anybody. But, Julio is, Matt Ryan has never missed a game in the NFL, and I don't see him missing a game any further. He, like I said, anybody could get hurt, but Julio is just super, super, super consistent. He beats number ones all the damn time without an issue, and, he's, to me, the safest wide receiver to take in your league. My wide receiver, 2, is Davante Adams. Davante Adams, he was just ridiculous last year. It is outrageous how many times Aaron Rodgers looked at that dude in the end zone. He really did. He was the number 1 target for the team. He was the number 1 red zone target for the team. He was basically a huge, huge, huge part of that complete offense. There's no other way to word it. Davante Adams, if you're going by the team stats on our cheat sheet, our cheat codes, all 32, you can check that out. And like talked about it last time, and Davante Adams had 169 targets. That's a lot of targets. Yeah, compared to the second closest person on the team was Jimmy Graham with 89. So he almost doubled up Jimmy. He got just a ridiculous amount of red zone looks. He was targeted 31 times inside the 20. He was targeted 8 times inside the 10. He scored 16 touchdowns inside the 20 and 6 touchdowns outside the, inside the 10. So he is just one of those dudes that is always going to be looked at in the red zone. The closest guy to him in red zone targets was Jimmy Graham with 9 outside of, inside the 20, and then 5 inside the 10. So it's not a comparison. My third is DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins is awesome. I don't really think I need to elaborate on that all too much. He's just, he's the number 1 target on that team. I think if the other guys, Kiki Cutie and Will Fuller, are healthy this season, I think that might take away from him a little bit, which is why I have him at 3. So I'm kind of counting those guys to stay healthy this year. And then Odell Beckham is my 4. Antonio Brown is my 5. Michael Thomas is my 6. Mike Evans is my 7. Juju is my 8. AJ Green is my 9. And Keenan Allen is my 10. That wraps off my top 10. All those guys I think are super safe in PPR. I know AJ Green I have a little high, but AJ Green is AJ Green. If he stays healthy, he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver, period.
All right, yeah. So you kind of talked about Davante Adams a little bit. Davante Adams is my number 1 guy. You look at what he did last year. Steve just threw all the stats out to you. 169 targets. Overall, he was so heavily targeted in the red zone. You add to the fact that Matt LaFleur is the new coach. He comes from Tennessee. If you look at what Tennessee did last year with Corey Davis, they moved him all over the field, which is what we're hearing Davante Adams is going to have. And on top of that, Corey Davis's targets from that offense were like 45% of the passes thrown. It's somewhere in the 40s. It's ridiculous amount of targets compared to anybody else on the Titans team. I can see that being similar to the case in Green Bay this year. So I like Davante Adams, my number 1. Dan, who do you have number one?
I flip flopped a whole lot, but I think only for the simple reason of strength of schedule. I got Hopkins as number one. There really is no wrong between the three of those guys. I mean, I had Julio first and Hopkins second. Then the more I dug into the schedule, I kind of like Hopkins' schedule more, and I kind of like Deshaun Watson. He's just electric right now, and he's must see TV. Not saying that Matt Ryan's bad. The dude was the MVP not too long ago. So yeah, I do have Hopkins number one. I think he's just consistent. Obviously, Julio's been consistent in his whole career too. So there really is no wrong answer. I have him as an ever so slight edge, and maybe my next rank will show something different if I evaluate a little more and like value in one of the guys more. So like I said, Hopkins number one, Julio number two, Devontae Adams number three. I'm probably not gonna say anything that you guys just didn't say about him. He's incredible, and he has Aaron Rodgers throwing to him, so that's really all you need to have a superstar on type season. As long as you got ability, Aaron Rodgers is going to extend plays. He's going to make it happen for you. So those are my top three, and then we'll go into my top 10, which after them I have Michael Thomas as number 4, got Antonio Brown as number 5, Odell Beckham 6, Juju 7, Mike Evans 8, Amari Cooper 9, and Stephon Diggs 10. So that rounds out my 10.
All right, so what I think is kind of interesting is actually us having 3 different number one guys. It just shows you the variety of receiver that is around the NFL. I'm going to ask you guys a quick one. Just throw a name out there. I'll give you mine first. Who's a under the radar guy, still in the second round, maybe third round, that could finish number one? My guy is Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans has a chance this year to be the number one receiver. Who do you guys think that could possibly crack the number one spot that isn't a guy that's typically getting ranked up there?
Juju.
That's another one. Juju could possibly see 200 targets. So
yeah, Juju's...
if he winds up living up to the upside, he's definitely going to be the number one receiver.
Yeah, Juju's going to see just a shitload of targets. There's no other way to say it. He's just going to be super crazy targeted. And, I think Big Ben is going to force feed him the ball because, Big Ben is a spiteful motherfucker. He's going to, he's going to barrage his ass with targets just to show Antonio Brown, like, hey, look, bro, I don't need you. You know what I mean? We're gonna take this team to a Super Bowl, and I don't think they're going to a Super Bowl. But Ben. Ben is one of those cocky ass, arrogant quarterbacks that you hate to love. But he's got that in the back of his mind. That is one of those things where he's sitting there salivating, going, "I am going to make Juju break every possible record I possibly can." Now, I don't see that happening. You know what I mean? I don't think Juju is going to finish number one. But he, if you're asking for a high, low end, first round guy or a, mid round second guy, I think, Juju's going in that range, and he could definitely finish that high. He could finish one with his targets.
All right, I'll give you a guy that's projected low 4, and it's probably not going to happen. Like Steve said, I think Juju has a much better chance of this guy. But here's going out on a limb. How about Julian Edelman? He's going to be everything for the Patriots this year. No Gronk. No Hogan. They're obviously still going to move the ball. It's what the Patriots do. They're going to be in contention. Too early to say Super Bowls or anything like that. Call teams out. We haven't even seen any preseason games yet. But I'd like to see what how much they work Julian Edelman. He's a little guy. They may overwork him to the point where he can get hurt again. But
Dan said, "Fuck it, I'm going way out of the limb."
way out of the limb. I mean, hey, Edelman can do damage. I don't know about number one damage, but if he stays healthy, I mean, games without Gronk, he's definitely put up some great numbers.
It's all Brady's going to look for.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think Edelman's being underrated.
He's definitely been underrated.
He gets open. He'll find ways to just get open. They can cover the middle of the field. They can take his out away. He'll find holes. That's him and Brady, but they'll find holes. He'll get his looks. He'll get his 150 targets this year.
I hear that. I agree. I think he definitely has that upside. He definitely does.
All right. So without further ado, we're going to get into more of our just individual guys that are ranked higher than, you know, I guess the other two of us. So Steve, I'll start with you. Sammy Watkins. Now, obviously, we talked about the Tyreek Hill situation. I'm sure your Sammy Watkins ranking is kind of a reflection of that. You have Sammy at 14, pretty high compared to the rest of us. Why don't you talk a little about Sammy Watkins?
So my thing about Sammy is, okay, so Sammy is one of those receivers that is really only bad because he's always hurt. You know what I mean? Like, if he wasn't hurt, if you look at his numbers, just look at his per game numbers, the dude is actually really good. You know what I mean? He was good in Buffalo with no quarterback throwing to him. You know, last year, Tyreek Hill and you know, the backs they were throwing out of the backfield to those guys. But Sammy was, you know, when Sammy had good games, he had good games. You know what I mean? It was, I think if he is the number one guy for like I've said before, a generational talent in Pat Mahomes, I think that Sammy Watkins could finish really a lot higher than people are assuming. So, you know, if kind of the way I have it in my head is if Sammy can score 10 touchdowns, he definitely has that upside without Tyreek Hill, especially if Tyreek Hill misses 6 to 8 games. You know, I could definitely see some scenario where Tyreek, you know, the league gives him 8, he goes to arbitration, they fight it, and he goes, you know, knocked down to 6 or, you know, 7 games, you know, they take a game away or whatever. But for me, I like that Sammy is going to be the number one with a quarterback that is amazing. There's no other way to say it. You know, Sammy has shown consistently that he can beat you deep. You know what I mean? Just watch the game tape on Sammy Watkins. The dude, he just finds a way to get open deep, like all the time. And he's deceptively fast. I think people see how big he is and don't realize how fast he is. And then he puts on that second gear, and he's gone. You know what I mean? He's not Tyreek Hill fast, obviously, because Tyreek Hill is just a ridiculous blazer. But, you know, Sammy Watkins is not slow by any stretch. And I think this year, with the uptick in targets, if he can stay healthy, he can definitely finish that high.
Yeah, I mean, my thing with Sammy is just the injuries. You know, it's just the ifs. It's like if he stays healthy and if Tyreek Hill is you know, gets an 8-game suspension. It's just too iffy for me to go that high.
I agree.
So Dan,
I agree with the ifs. There's a lot of ifs.
Yeah. All right, so Dan, you might be the only person I've seen that has Stefon Diggs ahead of Adam Thielen. And it's really not a bad call, but I'm curious your information on it. You have Diggs at 11 and Thielen at 16.
All right, so they're very similar in stats. Last year and, you know, for the first few years of their career, Diggs actually played one less year than Thielen. Diggs is going into his 5th year. Thielen's going into his 6th year. And Thielen's got a couple yards more, but Diggs has 6 more touchdowns over their career. Now, granted, Thielen did start off a little slower. I don't think they thought he was going to be the productive player that he is today. But I just feel he's just a better. I just feel he's a better receiver, more overall balanced receiver. I think Thielen started incredible last year, and they rode that. He had the chemistry early with Kirk Cousins in in his first year, and I think that was good chemistry. But then as we went along the season, Diggs got a little more comfortable, and I think that's going to carry over. I think that Cousins is going to look for Diggs a little more. I think he gets open a little better than Thielen does. Overall, runs a little better routes. So I'm actually high on Diggs this year. I'm not telling anybody to go and pick Diggs ahead of Thielen because, like you said, Kev, I'm the only one that probably has him, you know, at that value. But, you know, he may be one of the best. You know, they have an ADP for him at the end of the 3rd round, and that may be one of the best values you're going to get. I mean, you get Diggs at the very, very end of the 3rd round, he is going to outproduce an end of 3rd round player all year long. I trust you on that one.
All right, so going back, looking at last year, week 9 to week 16 in PPR, Stefon Diggs was actually 1 spot ahead of Adam Thielen. So what you're saying is right. You know, Thielen got off to that big start last year where he had 9 consecutive 100-yard games to start the season. And
he was number one for the first half.
yeah,
of the season.
he was number one for the first half of the season.
He was playing out of his mind, and he started to basically tail off into the above average player that I think he is. I mean, but he was out of his mind. I know that because in our league, my brother had him, and I was messaging him saying, like, dude, this dude is going crazy. What is going on right now with this guy? I mean, he was out producing the top name guys just for the first half, and then like I said, he came back down to earth.
Yeah, that was if you looked at the offense, that had a lot to do with it. I don't like using big words because they sound silly when I say them, but if you extrapolate the numbers after they fired what's his name?
DeFilippo?
Yeah, DeFilippo. They started running the ball 49% of the time. Yeah, I mean it was a huge spike in running plays. So you just take that into account, and that's kind of the reason why Thielen kind of went sideways. But Diggs stayed pretty good after that. After
Diggs stayed pretty on par.
Yeah, he was pretty good. And the other thing is, so when watching Diggs, we not only look at the numbers, guys. We also watch tape. We subscribe to Game Pass, and we do the tedious grind of watching film. And I don't know. I find it really hard to say that Stefon Diggs does not run the best routes in the NFL. He's amazing. If you watch his quickness out of breaks and just how smooth, especially like a double move or a crossing pattern or any kind of stutter step action, even at the line. Like if you watch him at the line when people try to jam him, you'll notice that corners don't really try to really jam him because his footwork is so good that he kind of beats you. So you want to be real careful with that. And I think defensive coordinators watching the film see that, and they're like, okay, let's not try to jam this dude too much. Jam him on situations that we need to jam, and leave him alone the rest of the time, which is kind of why he's, I hate to say it, he's always open.
Yep, his footwork reminds me a lot of Ocho Cinco. He used to have super quick feet and break inside breaks that defenders had to respect all the time. You could not jam the dude. He was too quick off the line.
Yep.
Diggs has a lot of those qualities.
All right, so now I'll get into my first guy that I think has, I don't want to say bust potential, but considering where he, the hype on Amari Cooper, I just think that he's going to leave you in a similar spot that he left you in Oakland, where, you're going to get your games where he has, blow up games. But ultimately, he's going to be, a low end number 2 wide receiver 3 at best in those weeks, because he just doesn't. There's some weeks where he just doesn't perform. So I'm going to give you a couple examples. Last year he played 9 games for Dallas after getting traded. He had 2 games where he was just absolutely ridiculous. The Eagles game on when they were battling for first place, and the Washington game on Thanksgiving. In those 2 games, he had 18 catches for 297 yards and 5 touchdowns. Those type of games are like career games. They're not even season, great season games. They're like career games.
Yeah.
I think Amari Cooper has blow up games, but I don't think they're going to be that big. So those 2 games were 2 out of 9. Now let's go to the other 7 games. In the other 7 games, his total was 35 for 328 and 1 touchdown. So essentially, his average for the other 7 games of the season with the Cowboys were 5 for 46, and maybe he gets you a touchdown. That's not going to do too much for your fantasy squad if he's not blowing up as frequently as 2 games every 9 isn't really even that great of a blow up. And trust me, his blow-up games are not going to be as big as they were this past season. He's not going to go, for 200-yard games and 3 touchdowns consistently. It's just nobody does that. So I could kind of see him taking a step back. And honestly, the only thing that to me makes him different than, say, even Tyler Boyd or, somebody in that realm, is the fact that, he plays for the Cowboys and he just has the limelight. Those were the two games. Those two games that he blew up, he actually did in primetime situations. The one was a 4:00 game with Troy Aikman where it was a first-place game, and the other one was on Thanksgiving. So, his games where he blew up were very high-publicized, high-watched games, which made it look like he was way more successful in Dallas. Ultimately, to me, he was just still the same receiver as he was in Oakland. He just had bigger blow-up games. That's all.
I somewhat agree. I think the only reason I'm a little higher on him than you, I'm probably ranking him similar to what his ADP is, but I think because he got thrown in the Dallas. I mean, he got traded halfway through the season. He got thrown into a completely new offensive scheme. He went from Gruden, who is my way or the highway, to Clappity Clapperson over there, and two totally different. Dallas with they got Zeke. They like to play balanced, and I mean obviously Oakland was a train wreck last year, but I think this year with the training camp under his belt, with new additions like Randall Cobb, who's going to add stability as a vet. Old ass Witten, who knows what he's going to do, but he's a vet. Zeke is going to be Zeke if he doesn't get suspended. I heard he met with the commissioner today. They didn't release any kind of details on it. He just sent out a public apology today, so probably trying to cover his ass a little bit so he doesn't gain a bigger suspension. Yeah. But I'm not low on him. I'm not high on him. I'm pretty much where he should be. I think he's going to have a good year. I don't think he's going to have a great year. I think he'll be productive.
And I honestly think Zeke getting suspended is probably bad for Cooper. Honestly, because
terrible.
I just think I think that's bad for Cooper. That's the worst thing that can happen. Cooper is Zeke gets suspended because now all the attention goes to him. So, all right, you got anything to add on Cooper, Steve?
Amari Cooper is Deshaun Jackson, except 6'3".
Okay.
That's it. He's Deshaun Jackson, except 6'3". And there's the thing. He's on a good offense, which is why I have him where I have him, because I think I have him at like 15 or 16. He's on a good offense, and I think he's going to get force-fed targets because they gave up a number one for him, and they're going to pay him. And I don't think there's a doubt. They're going to pay him before they pay Zeke, if I'm being honest. And mark my words on that one. But he definitely brings a different dynamic than what they've had there. Even when Dez Bryant was there, Dez was never known as a deep threat. I mean, Dez was a high value possession receiver. He was just a guy who could jump up and get the ball and score a bunch of touchdowns because he was just out muscling guys in the end zone for balls. So, he is definitely a deep threat type of player, and I think they are going to target him a shit ton. So with the amount of targets he's going to see, I just think he's going to be, I think it's hard to not be good when you see 160 targets, and that's kind of where I have him penciled in at.
All right, so Dan, you are fairly high on Corey Davis. You have Corey Davis at 28, which you have him ranked ahead of Tyler Boyd, ahead of DJ Moore, ahead of Mike Williams. You are loving some Corey Davis this year.
I am. He kind of, like you touched on with Amari Cooper, he kind of had a couple blow-up games that inflated his numbers a little bit. But he saw a ton of targets. Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah. Out of his 900 yards, I think maybe 400 of that, half of that was to the freaking Eagles. God damn it, he won it for them. He crushed us. That crushed me. That's where he stuck in my head throughout the season, and I was like, I hate this guy. But no, the word out of Tennessee right now is that they love him. They said he's got all the talent, he's got the ability. I've been a Mariota fan since Oregon. I mean, bless the kid, has not had an incredible career. He's not had a bad career. He's just been kind of riding the mediocre train. So I think those two are going to have a good connection. I think they'll find some success early in the season, carry it through. But yeah, I'm high on him. I have a gut that he's going to see a lot of targets, and with us being in PPR, targets normally equates to pretty decent fantasy output. I could see like 1,100 yards, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, 80, 90 catches, which at a mid-9, which is what his ADP is. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, I have him. I have him right about I would say like 900 yards and 60 catches, but I do think he'll score some touchdowns this year. We have to remember that, injury bug really hurt them last year,
100%.
Yeah, the injury bug really hurt that team last year. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that team is like crazy talented, but when you add A.J. Brown, who to me was a top 3 wide receiver in this draft, and Corey Davis was my second favorite wide receiver in his draft. Mike Williams was the only, wide receiver I liked better in that draft. But for me, I think Corey Davis is the number 1 on that team. I think AJ Green. I think AJ Brown is going to, definitely open up things for him. They're not going to be able to, double him the way other teams have done. Delaney Walker opens up the middle of the field as a just really dominant, big guy in the middle, and that also helps Henry. Henry is going to, from what we're all hearing, they're going to feed this dude. So if that's the case, we all know Corey Davis could be, a deep threat, and he's also a good hands catcher of the football, a good player, period. I don't think it's far-fetched to think that he could finish as, a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2.
So I was so high on Corey Davis last year, and he just bit me in the ass so bad. Considering the amount of work he got last year, and he's not going to get anywhere near that this year. They added Adam Humphries. They added A.J. Brown. They get Delaney Walker back. They're going to run the ball more from what we hear. Like, I just see a total decrease in his targets. I think Mariota is a completely inaccurate quarterback. And so, therefore, Corey Davis, to me, is pretty much going where he should be drafted. I can't get high on Corey Davis after what he did to me last year. I'm sorry. So, Steve, Will Fuller. I think you are higher on Will Fuller than anybody.
Yes.
Talk to me about Will Fuller. You have him ranked at 18.
Yeah, if Will Fuller stays healthy, he is going to be he's going to be a mid-range number 2 wide receiver. Just look at the kid's numbers when he's healthy. He's really, really good. I see, and this is the other thing. When I do my ranks, I don't worry about injuries because this is what you have to think of when people who are not really fantasy football savvy, they worry about ranking guys high because they're scared of this. I think I'm a good enough drafter of my team and good enough person with trades and things like that if something happens, I can make something happen on my team to fix it. You know what I mean? I'm never out of it. It doesn't matter what happens. I'm always thinking the next week ahead, or I'm watching what's going on in the next 3 weeks. So for me, I don't rank players, worrying about injuries because I don't think that's a good way to rank. I think if you're going to rank players, you definitely want to put it into account. So you might want to put other guys that, have the same same ceiling, I guess, or floor ahead of him. But I have him at 18 because I feel like if he plays all 16, the dude is 100% capable of a 80 catch, 12 touchdown, 1,200-yard season. I mean, that's in his range of outcomes. That is something he could 100% do. And if you remember last week's podcast or 2 weeks ago, no, what was it? Last week's podcast, the QB ranking podcast, we all had
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson way up there. So
top 3.
So if we all believe he's going to be a top 3, then he's got to throw the ball to somebody. And Will Fuller is the second best receiving threat on that team. If he stays healthy, he's going to be, mark my words, if he stays healthy, he's going to be 8+ touchdowns and over 1,000 yards with at least 75 catches. That's the way I see it.
You don't think Lamar Miller is going to take all the work away from him and DeAndre Hopkins?
No.
If anybody has any questions about Lamar Miller, go read some of Steve's articles and his player profiles on Lamar Miller. I never seen someone's name get dragged through the mud. Poor guy What did he do to you? Did he spit in your Cheerios in one morning?
No, he's just not good, dude. I'm sorry. Lamar Miller is just so coming out of Miami, he was so overrated. Like even
he's 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Dude, when he if you looked at the games that he played in Miami, that people were like, "Oh man, if he goes to a good team and gets the full workload, he's going to be amazing." Like, what did he do? Like, what did he do in Miami that made you go, "Oh my God, this guy is so good"? He had a couple of ridiculously huge holes that he ran for touchdowns. Other than that, the guy didn't do shit.
Most of his games are literally like 31-yard stats. Like, he gets the bulk of the carries. Like, it's like 11, 12 carries, 32 yards.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
are you
dude.
kidding?
I know it's bad. He's bad.
I don't want to get stuck on him. I just want to make a point on that
bad.
offense. Yeah. All right, go ahead, Kev.
All right, so to speed things up a little bit, I'm going to talk about Cooper Kupp. I have Cooper Kupp ranked as the highest rated Rams receiver, which I think is going against the grain a little bit. If you look at the first 4 weeks of last season, which is pretty much maybe the only time they were really fully healthy altogether, was the first 4 weeks. St. Louis is an offense that likes to spread the ball around. During those first 4 weeks, Cooper Kupp had 31 targets, Robert Woods 34, Brandon Cooks 33. So if you look at that, they basically were getting targeted the same amount of time. However, Cooper Kupp had 4 touchdowns. Robert Woods had 3 touchdowns. Brandon Cooks had 1 touchdown. Cooper Kupp was the number 6 fantasy wide receiver compared to Robert Woods, who was number 15, and Brandon Cooks, who was number 9. Basically, in this offense, they all are going to see targets that are very similar. The offense spreads the ball around, gets everybody involved, and kind of works around the centerpiece, which is Todd Gurley. So when you get into the red zone, Cooper Kupp is literally their primary target. They run a lot of, wide receiver picks. They get that slot receiver on the outside where he has a wide open, kind of a wide open route to the outside where he's able to work his way into the end zone. He's going to score the most touchdowns. If Cooper Kupp stays healthy, I think Cooper Kupp has wide receiver 1 upside, and that's just how I feel.
Yep. I think Cooper Kupp is awesome. I took Cooper Kupp extremely high last year. I think I took him in the 6th round in our draft, and people looked at me like I was crazy. But, I could see the potential in the kid. I thought, he was definitely going to be their red zone guy, and he was. I thought that they were going to be an explosive offense, and they were. The injury is what, killed his production. He was on a pace for 16 touchdowns. The dude was averaging a touchdown a game before he got hurt. So, he was on a ridiculous pace. He obviously wasn't going to keep that up, but in the same token, he was definitely almost a lock for 10 touchdowns last year. So I love his ability. My only fear for Cooper Kupp is the beginning of the season. I just hope they don't overwork him or make sure that he is completely, fully healthy before, they even put him out there. Because if we're being honest, they don't really need Cooper Kupp, to win games. They showed that last year. So if he's not ready to go week 1, don't put him out there. And this, I want to say this because this really fucking makes me angry. All the fantasy analysts that you listen to that tell you that you have to worry about, any of the Rams players, period. I don't care if it's Gurley, I don't care who it is, that say he's not going to play in the preseason. Stop listening to those people. They're fucking retarded. No one of the Rams starters plays in the preseason. Not
Ever.
one. You can go
Ever.
look it up. They have no stats on their records at all in the preseason because McVay does not start his starters in the preseason, period. So the people who are telling you this are fucking retarded, and stop listening to them because they don't know what they're talking about. And this is the past 2 seasons. This isn't just last year. This is the past 2 seasons that McVay has been the coach there. He does not play his starters in the preseason. So stop listening to that shit.
There you have it. So, all right, now we're going to get into the mid, kind of our 30 to 50 rank range. Dan, why don't you start? Give me a guy in your 30 to 50 range that you think could pop and, possibly have a little bit of a wide receiver 2 upside.
All right, I got a guy here, D.D. Westbrook. He's got a mid-round 10 ADP, and I think D.D.'s going to have a really good year. He's and if you're in a dynasty league like us, you can pick him up, 10, 11. I think you're making out pretty good. I think he has that, huge upside, huge potential as a dynasty player to really have a much bigger ADP next year. But he still had a good year last year. He had 66 receptions, 717 yards, and 5 touchdowns. This was with Blake Bortles, Bortles throwing to him, wherever else they had in there after Bortles. I don't know. Did Bortles start the whole season? They became irrelevant to me during the season.
Yeah,
did Bortles play the whole season?
No, they benched him week 10 or whatever it was.
And then it was just quarterback by committee. So, now he's got Nick Foles. And Nick Foles is accurate. Nick Foles throws a great deep ball. He makes great decisions. And, they already have a strong run game with Leonard Fournette. And, it's more of the value you're going to get for him. At a mid-round 10, I think he's going to hugely outproduce that ADP. I think he's going to be a great dynasty player. I wouldn't be surprised if he cracked 1,000 yards. I don't think 10 double-digit touchdowns, but I think he, 5 to 10 again, 80 balls. I'm pretty high on DD.
Yeah,
I did an article on him. I get a little more in depth. Did an article on him on our website. So if you guys are ever on our site, check that out and read up on that. Third year receivers that I think are going to make a bit more of a splash this year than they did the last year or two.
Definitely. You got it.
Yeah, I like DD. I like DD too.
Yeah, DD is probably going to be the best receiver on that team. This is the thing. No, go ahead.
Marcus, I was just saying, Marcus Lee's terribly. Dude has just been awful since he came.
Yeah,
sticks around. He puts up way below average stats every year.
Yep, I agree. It's one of those things where Lee is always injured, so his stats are they show that, and it's one of those things where the Jags, we don't know what kind of offense they're going to be. Really, we know they're going to want to run the shit out of the ball, and we know that they have a more accurate quarterback, but we don't know who the number one is there. We don't know, if their tight end is going to be any good. We don't know if Leonard Fournette is going to stay healthy. There's a lot of question marks on that team, which is going to give you value on a lot of those players. Leonard Fournette a year ago was a first-round pick. The year before that he was a mid-second-round pick. So, it's possible that the Jags are better than people are thinking, and if you take some of those Jag players, and the Jags are a better team than we all anticipate, you could end up, being really happy with your draft, taking, a Westbrook in round 10, or, even a Chris Conley in, I think he's going in like round 15. He's got like a round 15 ADP, and there's a lot of stuff coming out of Jaguars camp that he looks really good. So, I would throw some darts at those guys if you're hurting at receiver and you need some upside.
Yeah. So, Steve, why don't you get into your guy a little bit?
All right, so if we're talking about a late round guy, I am going to give
We're talking 30 to 50.
30 to 50. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
30 to 50. 30 to 50. So, 30 to 50.
Hope you don't take my player.
Well, give your player first, and I'll go.
All right, I'll give my player. Christian Kirk is my guy. I think Christian Kirk has the ability to be a mid-wide receiver too, honestly. I love Christian Kirk. The guy is so electric. He's a big play waiting to happen. I said that on our mock draft podcast when I drafted him. His feet, we were talking about Stephon Diggs a little earlier and how he's so quick in his breaks. And Keenan Allen is the same way. Keenan Allen is the guy. I love watching Keenan Allen run routes. I love watching Christian Kirk run routes. Like his breaks and he's so smooth in his breaks. He knows how to, that first step off the line is just explosive. And this guy can take a screen pass 60, 70 yards like he did a couple times last year. So, I think Christian Kirk has the ability, if he stays healthy and that offense is what it seems, and Kyler Murray, winds up being as good as advertised. It's the same thing. It's a lot of ifs. I mean, we were talking about ifs with Sammy Watkins. There's a lot of ifs, but if everything works right for Christian Kirk has the ability to be a mid-wide receiver too.
Not to mention they also have a great mentor in their locker room at their position too. A lot of these young guys, in Arizona, can't downplay the fact that Larry Fitzgerald was one of the best to ever put the gloves on.
Yeah, it's true. I agree. Christian Kirk's a very good player. If you watch his tape last year, you will see that he was really, really good. He's got a ridiculous double move that left a lot of. Just watch the Bears-Cardinals game. I know, it was bad. It's not a game that you want to watch, but it's the game that sticks out of my head for Christian Kirk. If you watch that game, you will see Christian Kirk just dominate. He really did dominate in that game. He was electric, getting open and, catching the ball and, just one of those guys that if you get him, I really think you're going to be happy with the production he gives you this year. So my guy is actually Dante Pettis. I kind of have two guys that are bothering me. It's Dante Pettis and Sterling Shepard. Those are the two guys, that I kind of have, I'm wrestling with, So
yeah, and everybody's ranks are a little different. So when I say rank 30 to 50, we're just basically talking about guys that are out of the wide receiver 2 range that could probably, hop up in there.
Exactly. So, you know what? I'm going to talk about Sterling Shepard because, I think Dante Pettis is getting a lot of noise. So I'm going to go with Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard is okay. I'm going to say it. They're bad. They're not a good team. They're a bad team. But Eli Manning's going to have to throw the ball. If you're assuming that the Giants are going to be down, then you have to be assuming that they're going to throw the ball. And if they're going to throw the ball, they don't have a whole lot of targets there. You know what I mean? They got Saquon, they got Sterling, they got Tate, who's getting a little older there, and they got Ingram, and that's basically it. You know what I mean? Corey Coleman, come on, let's please quiet down the Corey Coleman noise. I hear more about Corey Coleman lately than I hear about Sterling Shepard, which is a joke. But Sterling Shepard is actually a pretty good receiver. If you watch his tape, he can beat guys and he gets open. Eli is not seeing him or he's not getting him the ball all the time. And now that he's the number one receiver there, I don't think he's the number one target because I think that's Evan Ingram. But he's the number one receiver there, and when you're number one target in Ingram is covered, I believe that he's going to see some targets. So I could easily see him in the 100 to 120 target range. Catching about let's say 70% of that, which hopefully Eli can get it in range of him that much. And if he catches 70 balls for let's say 805, I think he's a guy that you'll be pleasantly surprised with in a PPR.
All right, so Steve, why don't you go first on your late round guy? You seem like you were prepared for it. So
yes. So my late round guy, and I'm going super late because I don't like giving just the same old stuff that everybody else is giving. So my super late guy is Trey Quinn. All right, he's the Washington Redskins slot receiver. I just think he is going to get peppered. I think he is going to. Okay, so regardless to who starts there, whether it's Haskins or Case Keenum, I don't care who it is. Both of those guys are accurate guys that are smart, and they are going to use the slot receiver a lot. Haskins, if you watched him at Ohio State, he used the slot receiver a lot. You know what I mean? If you watched Case Keenum, how many targets, Kev, how many targets did Emmanuel Sanders get last year? He was the most targeted. He was peppered. Yeah. He was peppered. So to me, Trey Quinn is a guy that is flying really under the radar. You can take him as the last pick in your draft, and he could catch, 65 to 80 balls this year and really surprise a lot of people. So, I'm not going to say he scores, I'll say he's in the range of 4 to 6 touchdowns, but if he catches 80 balls for 700, 800, you're going to be happy you got him in the very last round.
Well, that was a dart throw.
With the eyes closed.
Dan, why don't you talk about your guy?
All right, my guy's not quite as late as Steve, but he's down there pretty good too. I'm going with Traquan Smith. He's got a around 14 ADP. He's only in his second year. Had some slight production last year, but I think this kid's good. I mean, dynasty league, not dynasty. I mean, dynasty league for sure. I think he has potential to be your next Chris Godwin, who was going 15, 16 last year, and now is obviously very, very high ranked receiver. But I think he's got that kind of potential where he's going to be playing with a big name receiver. He's got Mike Thomas, Chris Godwin's got Mike Evans, and he's got Drew Brees. And what more else do you have to say except the number one thrower of all time. He's going to obviously get find ways to get him the ball. He's going to get plenty of targets. He's going to be out there a lot in that offense. High power offense. They're going to keep the ball moving. Kamara is incredible. I'm high on the kid. I think he's gonna have a much higher productive season. I could definitely see 60, 70 catches. I don't think that's out of the realm for a second year. He's more comfortable with the offense, I'm sure, working with Drew Brees a little more now. So yeah, I think I don't know how you guys feel about him, but I'm high on the kid. I watched some game tape on him recently as I was trying to figure out who I was going to select as my low end late sleeper, and I just like what I saw. I liked a lot of the tape I saw on him.
Traquan Smith actually had a 2 or 3 week span, maybe even more, where he was just a beast. I mean, he was on everybody's radar for a couple weeks there, and then I think he got injured and kind of slowed him down for the rest of the year. But yeah, there was a couple weeks where Traquan Smith was really on everybody. He was one of the hottest pickups at a certain point during last year.
Michael Thomas just is going to get so much coverage. He's always going to see Michael Thomas. Obviously, he's going to see the number one. He's going to see the number one DB all the time. You can't really put a safety on him because Kamara he demands all the respect in the world coming out of the backfield. So you can't really do much more than put your number one quarterback on him. But I think it looked like he was open a lot in the middle. To go back to Traquan, it looked like he was open a lot in the middle of the field. It's just that offense has weapons, and I think he's going to get a lot of uneven matchups that he's going to work to his advantage.
All right, so I'm going to talk about a guy, and I'm going to go a little more common. I'm going to say Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Word is that he's getting a lot more to talk, a lot more of the outside reps at Green Bay that than consider compared to Geronimo Allison, who everybody has ranked way higher. I think that Marquez Valdes-Scantling could be similar to, not as good, nowhere near as good, but I think he could, kind of fill Jordy Nelson's role. I think he could kind of be the guy to get downfield. Kind of in his second year, he can break out and finish, and maybe not as a wide receiver 2 or anything that high, but definitely is a solid flex option. I would say a second flex option, in a good year. So, with that being the case, we are going to sign off. Remember that if you want to check us out further, you can check out the website at www.fourthandinchesfantasyfootball.com. That's www.4thandinchesff.com for all articles, content, a bunch of stuff. And remember, if you're listening to this, hit subscribe. And without further ado, we will be done for the day.
All right, guys. Peace out.
See you guys. Till next time.